At this point in time, we've probably all seen the headlines that GPU prices are finally falling. And while this hasn't reached most people outside of China yet, we will likely see another 10 to 20% drop in pricing over the next couple of months. This is due to a couple of factors. One, the decrease in profitability and people trying to get rid of their cards for a slight premium while they still can. And two, the crackdown in China and the fact that these Chinese farms are trying to salvage their investments by dumping their cards as well. And reportedly, in some cases for below MSRP. And so many of you are probably thinking, are buying these mining GPUs safe? So to get a good understanding on whether or not it's safe to buy used graphics cards, whether they were used for gaming or mining, we first need to understand why GPUs as well as other components fail in general. And it's actually not really about the workload that you're putting on the graphics card, but rather the heat produced. Heat is basically the death of all components, and so depending on how hot the GPU is actually getting, as well as surrounding components, will completely dictate how long the unit actually lasts. And so if you can keep the temperatures down, the card will just generally last longer, regardless of if you are gaming on it or mining with it. Now, when it comes to mining, many times these cards are actually undervolted and are running with the fans at nearly 100% fan speed. So since the fans are running faster than they typically would be, this generally helps keep the temperatures in check, but at the same time, it also wears out the fans much faster than they typically would be worn out. Luckily, most fans these days are easily replaceable, so as long as you're buying a model with replacements available online, it shouldn't be a concern for you guys. Of course, yes, fans are an extra cost if they do end up failing, but it still loads better than the entire card failing itself. So generally speaking, yes, mining cards were safe to buy used as long as the temps were kept in check and the cards were taken care of properly. But there's a big problem here, guys. How do we know for sure that they were well taken care of? Because they weren't our cards and we weren't monitoring them. And so unless we can actually take apart the card, you'll never know if it has bulging capacitors or other obvious defects that would point to poor care. Now, of course, buying used is always going to be a risk anyway, so you have to keep that in mind when you're shopping, whether it's for a graphics card or a motherboard or whatever. But I do have a few tips to help make this process a little less stressful for those of you guys who want to venture down this path. So for starters, I actually recommend buying through Hardware Swap or eBay over buying locally, as PayPal has solid purchase protections. Just make sure you're using PayPal goods and services versus family and friends when buying through Hardware Swap, because family and friends gives you no protections as they think it's just somebody you're sending money to or whatever. And also make sure that you are inspecting the card immediately upon receiving it to make sure it looks like it's well taken care of, there's no obvious damage, and it's working perfectly fine. If you can, try to find comparable benchmarks on the internet and focus on the temperatures of the card, not just the frames it's producing. Since we are assuming that these cards have been mined with, it may need some fresh thermal paste or thermal pads, and temperatures are going to be a massive indicator here. If buying locally, ask if it's been mined with, just so you know. Always ensure it's working before completing the transaction, and just make sure you look over everything to look like it has been taken care of well, aka no heavy dust buildup or visible damage. Older cards will obviously look a little bit more worn out, but if the owner took time to clean it up before selling it, they likely took care of it throughout its lifespan. Now, if it's a newer generation card, technically, most of these will still have their warranties. Whether or not the AIB partner will honor that warranty if the card has been used to mine with is a completely different story, even if mining workloads don't heat the card up nearly as much as gaming workloads do. And I'm pretty sure every AIB partner has it publicly listed in their warranty info that crypto mining will void the warranty on these cards. But like I mentioned earlier, it's incredibly hard for them to know what the card was used for and how well it was taken care of. And since technically you're buying it secondhand, you might not know for certain either. Now, I'm definitely not suggesting you lie about it if you run into any issues, but I am suggesting that you know your AIB partner's approach to warranties and understand if they have a transferable warranty as well. Some cards don't have them, so it's important to know if your AIB partner can warranty the card if issues do occur. So being as the bulk sales from China will likely hit the used market here in the US as well as other places in the world, this is a very important thing to try and avoid if you can. The mantra of this entire video has been mining GPUs are safe to buy as long as these cards were kept at safe temperatures. The problem with large scale operations is that they probably weren't kept at healthy temperatures, at least not all the time. Now, that doesn't immediately mean the cards coming from mining farms are complete junk, but it does mean if you can, you should try and avoid these cards. Buying used from small scale operations are always going to be a more favorable option here, but again, it's going to be very hard to know for sure. So when you are shopping for a card on eBay or Hardware Swap, dive into the seller's sale history. If an eBay seller is selling 150 used RTX 3070s with 30 already sold, they probably bought the entire lot from a mining farm. So either you better be getting a killer deal and know what you're buying, or just stay away from them altogether. the hardware swap trader that has 10 confirmed trades that are all different items and is now selling an RTX 3080 is what you are looking for. That's the type of guy, that's the type of card you want to buy. Even if they mined on the card, your chances are much better that they took care of the card and kept the temperatures low. And by buying through PayPal Goods and Services, you'll be able to inspect it once you receive it and make sure it's in good shape and it's working fine. Now, to be clear, I haven't done any before and after testing when it comes to performance of these units myself, but I have done a ton of research on this topic, with the conclusion being that performance won't really be impacted unless the cards need new thermal paste or pads, which totally makes sense because these cards will thermal throttle if they're getting too hot. I'll be leaving links to videos and other resources down in the description box below for those of you who want to see proof for yourself. And I actually have a used RX 570 that I bought last year that works perfectly fine. Was it mined with? That I don't know for certain, but I'm pretty sure it was based on how much I paid for it and where I got it. If this kind of testing interests you and you'd like me to do my own testing on the subject, let me know down in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.